Okay, so now we've graduated. Your time in Ohio is finally over. You're back here in LA. What's going on with you?
So pandemic is going on. I graduated 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, and it was tough because I saw a lot of my peers just really worried about like not getting jobs,
Mm,
and I was fortunate enough,
yeah,
and I worked hard to get a job after grad school, and I wanted to stay out in Ohio. But with the pandemic going on, my parents having diabetes, I was just like, if anything happens to them and
you
I
want to
can't
be
fly
there.
out, like I need to go back home. So I started to look for jobs back in LA, and I got one, and I came back home. And I started working for a nonprofit who works with unhoused folks, like housing them,
Yeah.
and like that transition period of like them having their own place and staying housed. So that
Yeah.
was my main role. So my role was called the clinical case manager.
Okay.
I was doing a lot of like social work stuff for these clients, advocacy work, and just making sure that they stayed housed.
Okay.
And I did that for about a year and a half. And then I knew I wanted to also do therapy because
Okay.
I found out that with a social work degree, you could
Yeah.
do the like therapy route. So I was like, okay, cool. So I wanted to see what's out there. And that's where on social media, I saw that Adriana Alejandre, the founder of Valnex Therapy, was hiring for a part-time therapist. So
Interesting.
then, yeah, I was just like, oh, I want to apply. I want to do
You're gonna
it.
swipe up
Yeah.
or swipe
So
right. What is it?
I don't
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
know.
Anyways, you.
So I slid into the DMs. No, I emailed her. I emailed her and I applied, and then she interviewed me, and like we kind of hit it off, and I started working under her. So I was doing like a full time
Gig.
clinical case manager and like part time therapy work.
How many hours? What did that kind of look like? What did your day look like? Because that
Right.
sounds like a lot,
Yeah.
honestly.
No, it was a lot. I was doing a lot. So like I would work from like 8 to 5, and then from like five 5 to 6 or 6 to 7, I would see some clients after work, and then I would also see clients Saturday and Sunday.
Wow. No days
So
off.
no days off, no days off. For that, and that lasted for about a year,
Okay.
like just doing a full time and part time job.
Did you ever take any vacation during that PTO, anything like that, or was you just on your grind mode?
I was just like on my grind mode.
Wow, that's
I know.
impressive.
I think like I would get sick, and that would be like okay, like I need to like step back.
Yeah, that would be your time off.
But like I was sick, so I couldn't do anything. I couldn't, yeah. And I think I got like COVID like during that time period too.
Wow,
And
that's scary.
it was just I was doing a lot.
Yeah.
My body definitely felt it, and I think during that transition, I also hurt my knee, so I stopped running. So my mental health just like went down the drain, and like my self worth was just like down the drain,
Yeah.
and I just like felt like you know really bad about myself. Like, who am I? I started questioning. I'm like, am I having like a midlife crisis? Uh,
I'm in my early 20s and I'm having a midlife crisis.
hmm So, so yeah, and then I said, why not do private practice full time?
Yeah.
I liked the clients that I was having through private practice, and then that's when I started Oaxacan Therapist, and that's when I started to like promote my services
Yeah.
and just like tell people who I am, like what I stand for, and everything that's out there. And I started to create community, like online community,
Hmm.
and I did private practice for full time for about like 3 months. Sorry. Um, for 3 months, and one, like it's very inconsistent because you're kind of like working for yourself
Yeah.
essentially. Like if you don't see a client, you don't get paid.
Yeah. It's
Like
very
no,
independent
yeah,
work. So you're like the CEO, you got to do all the time
hmm
management, bookkeeping,
yeah,
all that stuff.
yeah. And I was just like, nah, this isn't for me. Plus, I thrive on community, so I just also the practice that I was part of wasn't taking therapy.
Mm.
The sliding scale I felt like wasn't reasonable for the clients that I wanted to pursue or have as clients. I'm like I don't even pay $150 per a session,
Hmm.
right? Like no one's gonna pay that, or at least not the clientele that I want to
That
work
you
with.
want to, yeah.
So I put a pause on that. I went back to community mental health.
Can I ask
Yeah.
uh, what type of clients did you want to work with and why?
Um, I like to work a lot with like first gen college grads, like Oaxacans, like just by BIPOC. And that's like a big chunk of my caseload right now of like just like Oaxaqueños, Oaxaqueñas, like that
Yeah.
are out of like undergrad or getting into grad school or undergrad, and it's just like, and they're just starting off right in their
Mm-hmm.
careers. So I'm sure they're not making a lot of money for them to be like, I'm gonna pay 150 per
Per
week per
session,
session.
yeah.
I'm like, I don't even pay that,
Mm-hmm.
for my therapist. So I'm just like, no, like if I'm not doing it, why should I make someone else do it? So now I'm currently where I'm currently at is I'm an admin program manager. So my full time job consists of just administrative duties,
Mm-hmm.
overseeing like a team of clinicians,
Yeah.
making sure that they're doing their work. They're doing the paperwork y todo. Um, and then on the side, I have my private practice. Well, or I'll see like 4 clients per week. It's not bad. I have my weekends back.
You have your mental health back.
Mhm.
You have your running back.
Yeah, I feel like I found a good balance.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good. Wow. And so it took you to go through those trials and tribulations to get to where you're at now, right?
Hmm.
What would you say to someone who is in the midst of figuring out if they should go into pursuing that independent work or trying it out as far as like whether it be in therapy or anything else like a passion project, right?
Yeah.
Um, do you think that's what are some things they should be aware of as like as being independent and doing your independent work?
I think try it out part time. Like don't go like full head on.
Mm-hmm.
Especially yeah, that and I feel like I've gotten like people that have reached out. Like I'm interested in private practice. Like
Yeah,
how do I go about it? I'm like do it part time first.
yeah. Start it off.
Start off part time and see how you like it.
Okay,
You
okay.
know,
And now that you're an expert, I have some questions
I'm
for
an
you.
expert.
Yeah, you're an expert. I'm gonna have some questions for you about therapy, um, because I think it's important for I think a lot of folks who either are interested in having or going to therapy, and also people that are gonna be doing the work in the field, right?
Yeah.
So my first question for this.
Also, my roommate might come in soon, so we might have to edit this.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. We'll be like, come in and we'll be like, and the next question is for, imagine. Okay. So the first thing is like, was there anything, or is there anything now that you would say that you faced recently that has changed your mindset or perception on therapy? Like, what was your perception before, and then something that changed it to make it like now?
I mean, I think therapy before to me was very taboo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't start to see a therapist until I was in grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And like for anyone going to like grad school for like social work for psychology, get yourself a therapist.
I
Because
feel
how
like
are
it's
you
important.
going to be a therapist without having that experience?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for sure trying out therapy in grad school. I wasn't I mean all I knew was like I was gonna sit down in front of someone and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I had no idea of like what came before that, what came after that, or how does someone even get you to talk,
Yeah.
so with my first therapist, she was white, so I felt like it was really hard to tell her so many things about my family because I
Yeah.
felt judged or I felt perceived because she's probably thinking like, damn, like that's fucked up, like you're good in like really a really like bad situation type of thing. So I think that only lasted for like 3 months. And she even referred me out because she's like, I think you do have like heavier traumas, and
Yeah.
this is kind of just like college stressors type of therapy. So everything's going back to your trauma. So you're gonna need to like seek out like a trauma therapist.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, cool, thanks.
But hey, at least she knew like
Yeah.
that she was able to identify that. Now speaking of trauma, I'm curious to know like what's your perception on trauma and like I think people kind of like nowadays use trauma very like um very openly, right? Like how like when people said trauma back in the day before you knew about the industry and what it actually means. What did you think about it? and now like that you understand like traumas, how do you
Yeah.
see it?
I feel like back then, before I knew the definition of trauma, when someone mentioned trauma, I imagined something very, very huge. Like, oh, I got in a big car accident and like
Mm,
now I'm traumatized.
estoy tramado ahora
Uh-huh.
de manejar.
Yeah. Or like kind of like going back to like that susto piece of
Mhm.
like something big major happened to me and now like I'm just like traumatized. So that's what like usually what I thought of like
Yeah.
of what trauma was.
And now is has that changed, or have you? Is there anything that we should know as like people who don't, or maybe have the same perception? Like
Yeah.
anything that we should be aware of?
Yeah, so one thing I learned in grad school was where the word trauma came from, like the origin,
Hmm.
and that it comes from a Greek word called trauma, and trauma means wound. So when I think about trauma, I think about this wound. So similar to a physical wound,
Yeah.
we have emotional wounds, right? So if you get a cut and you kind of just like, leave it alone, it might heal on its own. But like what happens if you keep hurting that cut or like, something goes on it or like an infection comes or like,
Yeah.
you just keep slipping on the same knee, right? It just like gets bigger and bigger until like you cannot dismiss it anymore.
Wow.
So, and going back to like trauma
Yeah.
subjective, because we can both be in a car accident and it could hit you differently and it could hit me differently. And you could come out of there traumatized and I
Yeah.
could come out of there fine. And that's one thing that other people don't know. It's just like,
Um,
oh, like no te pasó nada. And it's just like, no, like I'm really traumatized from that
yeah.
experience. And a lot of people don't understand that concept.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense because we often hear our parents, I feel like sometimes are like, o está depresionado or está traumado. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
nada más levántate, estás bien, you know?
Yeah.
But I like the way that you mentioned it. Like it's, if it was a physical wound,
Mm-hmm.
we go to the hospital. But
Yeah.
if it's a mental or emotional wound, like, do we treat that?
Right. Like you seek support. I hope that you seek support because if not, it's just gonna be untalked about, right? It's never gonna get healed.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good to know. I think honestly, that's a good analogy that you said. Um, is there a pet peeve that you have of in the line of work that you do?
Mm. Like being a therapist or like
Yeah, being a
being a
therapist.
social worker.
Both, both.
um
Like, what's a pet peeve that you have?
I think something that bothers me about how people perceive therapists or social workers is like they see us as having all the answers,
Mm,
or like they see us as having our shit together. A lot of people reach out to me and they're just like, "You're doing amazing," and I'm learning to accept compliments.
yeah,
But at the same time, I'm just like, but I'm not that amazing type of thing. Like I have my own flaws,
mm,
So I think even on social media, I try to be like transparent and authentic, and not like lie about especially just social media aspect itself.
yeah,
But that's a different topic. Um, so I think like just like when people assume that I have all the answers or I know how to stay calm in a situation. Like I literally had an anxiety attack like last week. And I called my roommate as I was driving. Like I'm driving, I'm having an attack, and I don't know what to do. And she helped calm me
yeah,
down. And I had therapy on Friday and I cried. So it's just like I'm going through my own struggles.
yeah,
And because I have clients who do identify as me, sometimes I'm just like we're like going through the same thing.
yeah,
Like it's crazy. And like sometimes I am transparent with my clients of like I'm literally going through the same thing as
hmm,
and how are you navigating it?
yeah,
Can I assist you in seeing the different options that you have type of thing. So I am going back to your question. I think people assume or have gotten that assumption from others of like, oh, you're doing pretty well
hmm.
for yourself.
Do you feel like that because people assume that of you, that they're like able to just drop everything on you and like put you on the spot, like, oh, she's got it under control. Well, here's what I have, and then just boom, drop their baggage
Yeah.
on you. Is that
Hmm.
something that you?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes when I do meet just like friends, no, people that want to become friends, like people that I have met through like social media
Mm-hmm.
or from meeting other people and they hear like, "Oh, you're a therapist," and then they're just like, "Oh, therapize me," and then I'm like, "No," or like, "What's wrong with me?" Or like,
Yeah.
if I'm meeting someone and they know that I'm a therapist, they'll be like, "Oh, does that have to do with my childhood trauma?" And then I'm like, "I'm not in therapist mode," like
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
or like yeah, and then and like side note, like I recently kind of like starting to date, so even the people that I am meeting,
Mhm.
and I tell them that I'm like a therapist, they'll be like, "Oh, are you therapizing me right now?" Or like just things like that. Like they just see me
Yeah,
as like
yeah.
a therapist, and I'm just like,
They see you through one lens.
yeah, and I'm just like, no, I'm a human being.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. I think that's very important because um, I've also encountered some experiences like that. Like I work in the recruiting field, so like I always get people like, "Oh, you work in recruiting? Oh, so can you help me with my
Can you help me get a
resume?
job?
Can you get me a job?" And I'm like, I mean, like I don't even know you like that. Like,
Right.
so there is definitely a mindset or a shift when you're at work. You're working, right? And when you're in the space to do your work, and
Hmm.
then if you're just out and about, hanging out, chilling, you're not in that bubble, not bubble, but like in that space or headset.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So don't be asking Mirna in the street like, "Yo," no, I'm just kidding. Um, okay, and then going off of that, what's one thing you do love about therapy and the work and the social work aspect as well?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that like cheesy line of like I'm learning to hold space and uplift over others, and that's like the most beautiful thing ever. Because people come into therapy and it may be the first time that they're getting like heard.
Mm,
I think for a lot of my clients, I am the first person that is able to hold space for them. And then it's so funny because a lot of my clients that happen to be Oaxacans, they always come in and they're just like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk or like open up. And they end up running the session essentially, right?
yeah.
Because they're just like, bag after bag. And, I learned like, in therapy, there's different like ways to like, pause and be like, okay, like pause, like and let me give you some like feedback of what I heard.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I think like just being that safe space for others is like probably like the most rewarding part of this.
Wow, that's good to hear. Um, I'm gonna come to you now. I'm just kidding. No, but I think that's really interesting to hear you say that because um, I feel like there is a lot of people that sometimes are in a profession where like they only see the negative sides of it.
Hmm.
Obviously I'm talking to people every day about like, what do you like about your work? What don't you like? And like, there's like, I don't like my work. Like, I literally don't like my work. So I think when you have, with any job, I think there's going to
Hmm.
be things that are bad and things that are good. But as long as you have a good energizer throughout your work and understand it, I think that's what makes it worthwhile.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. Now, the last couple things is just 15, 20 years, if the earth hasn't, crumbled into pieces, what do you see yourself doing? What do you want to be doing? Or is that something that's still up in the air for you?
I want to start my own nonprofit.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I want to start my own nonprofit. I don't know. Well, I know the population is to serve youth and to essentially create this third space, kind of like I'm envisioning like kind of like what are they called, like YMCA's where youth go after school. So
After school programs?
like an after school program essentially, but really tailoring it to the community needs, because a lot of like nonprofits, they think this is what's best for the community, so they'll bring in this service and they'll bring in this,
Mm,
but it's like really no, like being in the community and just learning about what is truly needed, like what did I need growing up, and we can tailor it to Oaxacan youth, we can tailor it to um undocumented youth. It's just like I think knowing the network that I have now and bringing in the right people, we could make something beautiful like that happen.
yeah. And I think it creates a space, right? Because like
Hmm.
honestly, like coming from Washington to California, it was a kind of like a culture shock for me because I grew up and there's Oaxacans, but it's like my immediate family.
Hmm.
So any other Latinos, Mexicans that I encounter are
Hmm.
going to be from other parts. They're very different, and when you're Oaxacan, you kind of stick out. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie, you stick out. And
Mhm.
right, and we have a different way of, I don't want to say we generalize, but like I feel like for the most part, a different way of living and growing up with the different microaggressions that we face,
Yeah.
colorism, racism,
Mhm.
internalized racism, those types of things. And on top of that, you also serve like the youth community where also there's the BIPOC community within that space as well. So definitely something that people need, but sometimes people up there don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of like people that do make it to the top, they might have started from the bottom for sure. I never neglect that, but they never come back. They stay up there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like something that like, if I ever do start my own nonprofit and I come become like the CEO or whatever, like I'm still going to be giving workshops. I'm still going to be in community.
Yeah.
And it's just like I haven't seen that. And if there is an organization like that, like please let me know because I want to work for them.
Talk to us. That's cool. All right. Well, I'll drink to that.
Yeah.
And cheers. Couple quick questions. Yes, no, one word answers. You ready?
Yes.
All right. After each question, I need you to.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. Can a therapist read your mind?
No.
Okay. Who is the last client you talked to? I can't share, right? Can't share.
I can't share.
Okay, good. You got to drink then. Is therapy expensive? True or false?
Huh.
And
In
again, one
between.
between. Okay, okay. Who's your favorite client? Okay,
All
okay.
of them. They're all my favorite
Okay,
colors.
okay. Quesillo or queso fresco?
Depends on what you're having it with.
If you had to pick,
Queso fresco.
queso fresco. Damn. Mole negro or amarillo?
Mole negro.
So I like to hear. Champurrado or un cafecito?
Cafecito.
Okay. Favorite self-care activity?
Right now, biking.
Biking. Okay. Cool. Well, congratulations. You've answered all the questions correctly. And you are certified now to be in this podcast. Okay. We want to wrap up now with any upcoming projects that you have going on in the LA community or even virtually that people can attend or be aware of.
um, I don't have anything like official yet, but I do want to do another like queer Oaxacan virtual meetup since with the Healing con Comunidad event happened. There's some folks that reached out that wanted to attend but couldn't, and they're like, if you have anything virtual,
Mm.
that'd be cool. I'll probably end up doing that sometime in the summer. And just like Jefas con Libros, we always have like recurring book club meetings, so that's always like on a rolling basis. And then with Oaxacan Therapist, we are doing kind of like this like Instagram directory type of thing,
Okay.
so people can get to know us, and that's also like really cool. So I think there's like a couple little projects coming up with them as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to put the link somewhere right here
All
for them
right.
to follow. Um, any final words do you have for someone who's wanting to pursue a career in therapy or the social works?
Reach out. Reach out to me, reach out to social workers, reach out to schools, and ask students. Like really just talk to people in the field because you're going to get to know everyone's experience, and everyone's experience is different.
Okay. All right. Well, to all the cameras, that was our conversation with Mirna. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to connect. Mirna is not getting paid for this. All
Oh,
community
I'm not.
service. Oh, it's all community service. And again, appreciate you taking the time to speak about your experiences because I think it's definitely amazing work that you do. And I know you mentioned, you're not no Superman or anything, but we're all human, and I think that given the work that you've done is very valuable to not just those individuals who are seeking a career in the space, but also just folks that are part of the BIPOC Oaxacan community, first gen
Yeah.
POCs, right? So shout out to you, and yeah, we'll wrap it up with another drink.